In this video, we're diving into what makes a plant invasive and why the burning bush is a top offender, and what you can do to stop the spread and rewild your backyard. This tree may look beautiful in the fall, but don't be fooled. It is absolutely destroying ecosystems in North America. So let's talk about burning bushes and why you shouldn't have them in your backyard. If you're new here, my name is Emma, and I'm also known as the urban botanist. I love inspiring people to grow their green thumb and connect with nature. I also love talking about wildlife rehabilitation. I'm also really passionate about restoring ecosystems, and that's what I plan on doing in my backyard here in Chelsea, Quebec. I live in this absolutely beautiful forest where I've seen bears, foxes, deer, everything you can imagine. But what has really broken my heart is recognizing just how many invasive species of plants that have been intentionally planted here over the years. Now, this is not to shame previous owners or anyone at home who has planted invasive species. You just didn't know, and I'm sure they didn't either. The crazy thing is that a lot of these plants are so readily available at garden centers. Things like English ivy, periwinkle, and this plant behind me, the burning bush. The reason why so many of these plants are available at garden centers is because they're beautiful, they're hardy, they're easy to take care of, and they're difficult to kill. They also tend to be very ornamental and look beautiful in gardens, but what you may not realize is going on is that they are choking out native species of plants that our insects, pollinators, birds, and mammals all rely so heavily on. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking all about the burning bush and great alternatives for you to consider for rewilding your backyard. You do not need to live in a great big giant forest to have an impact when it comes to planting and removing invasive species. So I hope that this video inspires you to think one step further when it comes to what you put in the ground in your backyard, no matter how big or small it might be. Today, I'm joined by Andrea Brennan from Reconnecting Ecosystems, and crazy enough, she was actually the original gardener here for the original owners over a decade ago. She found me on social media. She spotted a photo of our house and was like, "Hey, I recognize that house. I think I used to work there." And after reaching out to me over Instagram, I invited her over for coffee, and we then devised a great master plan to remove a lot of the species that she, as a younger Andrea, was planting here at one point, not knowing at all the damage it would have on this beautiful habitat. Andrea is an expert in reconnecting ecosystems, and it was actually this landscape that inspired her to start her own business. So I highly recommend that you check Andrea out, especially if you are in the Ottawa, Wakefield, or Gatineau area, because this is the exact type of thing that she likes to do. She can come to your house, point out what's invasive, and come up with a plan on how to remove it and what to replace it with. Because if you're anything like me, you love your hummingbirds, you love seeing baby fawn, you love wildlife. And one of the best ways to support that wildlife and see more of it in your backyard is to plant native species. I will leave all of the links to get in touch with Andrea and Reconnecting Ecosystems in the description down below. Like, I am very curious to see how the view changes, because right now that burning bush is like the main tree that we can see from the house, from the kitchen, where we spend a lot of our time in this space. So I think it'll be nice. It'll open it up. We'll be able to see the water a bit more. Oh, looks like Andrea's here.
My name is Andrea, and I own Reconnect Ecological Landscaping. I've been landscaping and working in the horticulture industry for 20 years and studied ecological restoration at the University of Victoria, and I'm now working with native plants, and I've been helping homeowners to reconnect habitats in their yards and gardens. So I knew the original homeowners of this property, and I worked alongside them while they created this beautiful work of art in the landscape. Unknowingly to them and to me, a lot of these plants are invasive and were spreading through the forest and causing problems in the forest ecosystem. But as I was realizing that, that's what made me want to learn more about the right kind of plants in the right place and how we can actually help biodiversity rather than destroying it with the plants that we use in our gardens, which led me to going to study ecological restoration, just bringing the knowledge back to people so that they can make better choices when it comes to landscaping in their gardens that'll have a beneficial effect rather than a negative effect. The majority of the plants in conventional landscaping are going to fit in the non-native category, meaning that they've come from a different country, usually another continent like Europe or Asia. There are non-native invasive plants, which are non-native plants that spread aggressively and can run out of control and outcompete native plants. When I look at this, I just think about all of the plants that could have been here or that should be here, that used to live in this forest. The trilliums, the trout lilies, bloodroot, all sorts of different plants that would have been here. And it's just devastating to see this take over. Actually, if you look at this plant, this is a native plant, and there's periwinkle growing there and there and there. So it's only a matter of time before it comes right here and chokes this out. So not all non-native plants are bad for ecosystems. A lot of them are just fine. They don't spread aggressively. They can just live in your garden and they actually feed bees and butterflies. But on the dangerous end are the ones that spread aggressively and they have no natural predators, so they have nothing to keep their population in check. And these are the ones that are causing the biggest problems to our ecosystems, like periwinkle. Native plants form the foundation of everything. They're at the bottom of the food chain. There are plenty of insects that require certain plants in order to complete their life cycle. So the most well-known one is the example of the monarch and the milkweed. Monarch butterfly needs the milkweed plants to raise their caterpillars. So without milkweeds, the monarchs can't keep their species going. That's just one example of many different species that actually require one type of plant, one native plant, and a lot of those plants have been choked out by the current landscaping practices that we have in North America, which is using non-native plants, displacing natives. So native plants, they play a huge important role in biodiversity and supporting all of the insects that we depend on, but unfortunately they haven't been used in the conventional landscaping because they happen to have names like weed in them, like milkweed, Joe Pye weed. One of them is called pukeweed. I mean, who wants to put that in their garden? But it's actually a really lovely lobelia plant. So yeah, so as people are becoming aware of the decline in all of these native insects, say like the monarch, people are realizing that they have the power to do something about it in their own yards by planting the plants that these insects require to complete their life cycles. This burning bush, it's used quite frequently in landscaping, a lot of commercial landscaping, because it's a really tough plant. It turns beautiful burning red color in the fall, but it has these berries that also turn red. And the birds love them. They'll eat them and deposit them where they have a high successful germination rate. As you can see below here, there's a few examples of, these are seeds that were dropped and they've created new plants. So over time, when this happens in a forest, just like the periwinkle, this plant will end up choking out the native plants and displacing natives. The fruit here is why we have to do this soon, because once they ripen, if we start trying to cut them and get rid of them, they'll be able to germinate still. So if we get rid of them now, the better chance we have of destroying these seeds. So invasive plants end up in our gardens because they flower, they're really pretty, they cover an area quickly, which means it's less plants that you have to plant, less weeds that will come through. Because of these qualities, they're still used by the horticulture industry. Designers will still be using plants like periwinkle and burning bush, but unfortunately when they spread into natural areas, they take over and native plants can't grow. So for example, this property here, the person who installed all these gardens wanted this look and wanted the beautiful sweeping green, and in the spring all the periwinkle is covered in purple flowers and it's beautiful and it doesn't require a lot of maintenance. But without knowing the long-term effect, people just keep planting it, it keeps being used, and then we keep causing problems. So it's really important to learn about it and stop using these plants in our landscapes. The problem with periwinkle is that it will spread indefinitely and will choke out forests, and it won't allow plants like trilliums and trout lilies and all the native plants to grow. And all those native plants are supporting native insects. So if they can't grow, the insects can't live and their populations decline, and it just spirals through the food chain. And it even stops tree seeds from germinating and regenerating the forest. So this is a great example of how periwinkle, when it gets planted into a garden, it can quickly get out of control and run through the forest. So this periwinkle was planted, it was supposed to just be a ground cover right here along the path side. And now as I look through the forest, I can see it rambling on and on. Even if you intended to keep your plants, your periwinkle growing right here, you can't control them. Invasive plants will just keep spreading beyond your control.
To get started in removing this burning bush, you first have to, of course, correctly identify that you indeed do have them growing in your yard. Yes, they typically turn red in the fall, so that's easy, but you can also use this guide to identify your burning bush accurately, or reach out to a professional in your area who can support you in identifying invasive and destructive plants that may be growing in your yard. First and foremost, you want to ideally remove a burning bush or any invasive plant before it goes to seed, which typically happens after a plant has flowered. It's August right now, and this tree is starting to produce seeds. The primary way in which a burning bush spreads is through seed dispersal. So the ideal time would have actually been in the spring to remove this tree, but life just got in the way, so I'm happy to say that we're still removing it after all. It will just require some extra steps. We start out by cutting down the top branches. This tree is really old. As Andrea recalls, it's at least 20 years old. So we cut off the branches, being very careful to contain the seeds as much as possible. Since this tree spreads aggressively, we are using a tarp, which I highly recommend to ensure capturing all parts of this plant. We take our time removing branches, cutting them up, and placing them onto the tarp, slowly sawing the bush down to a stump. Now we have to dig the root ball up, and thankfully these bushes don't have very shallow roots, but it is incredibly important to get the entire root system out. This was probably the most consuming part of the job, digging and really just trying to get every single bit of the tree out so that it does not continue to spread and grow. Some trees will stop growing when you cut them down, like certain evergreen trees, but part of what makes the burning bush so invasive is its ability to continue spreading through its root system. So just keep that in mind. If you have any of these bushes growing on your property, you can't simply just cut them down. You need to remove the entire root system as well. All pieces of the burning bush are then dragged to a part of my property that gets a lot of sunlight. A common misconception is that you can just simply compost these invasive plants, but in fact, that only spreads their seeds further. Even a small fraction of the root system being displaced can be re-rooted and grown elsewhere. So to be a true eco-warrior and really eliminate the possibility of this plant spreading further into ecosystems that it's just simply not meant for, you need to actually kill the plant entirely. So with smaller trees, you can do this with black garbage bags, but because this one is just so big, we had to use a tarp. To do this, your tarp is actually multifunctional. Not only does it help to maintain all of the tree in one place, but it also helps to kill it when left in direct sunlight for 2 to 3 weeks. You need to make sure that it's covered and sealed. We made sure that we put a tarp not only, of course, on the bottom, but also on top. And at that point, the tree will truly be dead and you can safely dispose of it. Another thing we had to do was make sure we removed all of the little baby burning bushes that have sprouted just beneath the mother tree. These are already starting to spread into the forest, so it was crucial that we removed all of the tiny ones from the root to ensure that there was simply no part of this plant left behind. Removal really isn't just a one and done. You need to check back monthly and yearly to catch regrowth. Ongoing maintenance and monitoring is required and so essential to make sure that no new growth starts again. Next, we decided to replace this invasive plant with a native tree. We went with a pagoda dogwood or Cornus alternifolia because of its similarities to the burning bush. It too has vivid red foliage in the fall, but additionally produces beautiful white blossoms in the spring that native pollinators just love. So your butterflies and bees will be super happy if you plant this tree. Some other alternatives would be fragrant sumac, chokeberry, winterberry, eastern wahoo, or gray dogwood. Because this is a young tree and the surrounding area is equally infested with the destructive and invasive periwinkle or vinca vine, we are removing as much of this as well so that it does not creep in and choke out this newly planted baby tree. We weed it out as much as possible, and then to further smother the periwinkle, we are using cardboard to lay down on top of the ground, ideally cardboard with little to no ink, and removing all plastic tape as well. Once thoroughly covered, we then piled on wood chips. Mulch will also work here. This will keep the periwinkle at bay and provide the new baby dogwood a safe space to take root and grow.
So it doesn't matter how small of an area you have, you still have the ability to rewild, whether it's a small portion of your backyard or if it's a few pots. You can still support biodiversity and the insects that rely on native plants by just adding a few to your balcony. So don't feel overwhelmed. It might seem like it's a lot of work to do, and sometimes it might even feel hopeless when you look around and you see periwinkle everywhere you look. But if you look at the big picture and you start small and you just focus on small chunks that you can accomplish each year, you'll be making a huge difference. Just by taking out the smallest patch of periwinkle and replacing it with native plants, you'll see all sorts of native bees and butterflies that you weren't seeing before. They'll come as soon as you plant those plants. So every year you can make just a slight difference in a positive direction.
Just a reminder that removing invasive plants like the burning bush is one of the most impactful things that you can do for the ecosystem in your yard. And if you've discovered that you have a burning bush in your yard, don't panic. Start with one, then plant another in its place. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can all be done step by step. Leave me a comment down below if you are committed to rewilding your backyard. And hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos about native plants, rewilding tips, and how to turn your backyard into a haven for biodiversity. And if you're in the Ottawa area and want help with restoring your backyard, make sure that you reach out to Andrea from Reconnecting Ecosystems. I will leave her information in the description below. Her work is literally changing the landscape, and yours can too. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Thank you.